Jordan Maxwell, such a pleasure to have you because you are, one of the godfathers of the conspiracy research community. You've been studying this for decades, as I understand it. I think you came from the Manly P. Hall School. Your background, right, was learning
Yep.
from Manly Hall, who was that great Masonic scholar. And tell me a little bit of you've been, obviously we talk about the New World Order, we talk about the agenda for the new dawn, the new day, the new age, the new day that they have been talking about for decades. Give us just a bit of an overall agenda that you
Well,
saw.
let me ask you something. Did you see my last video that I did in Laughlin, Nevada?
I have not. I have not.
Okay, you need to see that. It's on the web. Go to Jordan Maxwell, Laughlin, Nevada. It's about 50 miles south of Vegas.
Okay.
And it's called the UFO, what is it? UFO Mega Convention or something like that. UFO, and it was done this past year. And so you need to watch that because I've got everything I had to say in it. And
Yeah.
it's very well done. It's very
Okay.
well done. And
So,
I'd like for you to see it
okay.
because you'll find out the last half of that presentation has all of the documents and pictures you would need to show exactly what's going on. I've got it all in there. So
Yes. For symbolism, I will definitely draw upon that piece. Um, I guess I'm just trying to say, if you could summarize, just if you were going to introduce people to the concept without getting into all the detailed, imagery of
yeah.
what is the New World Order agenda that you've studied and you've understood since the 60s and 70s, and seeing it come into fruition. If you were just giving people an outline, this is what the agenda looks like. This is what this is about.
Yeah. Well, what it actually is all actually about is land management, period. That's the whole entire monstrosity that we're living through right now is land, because America used to be called the land of the free and the home of the brave. But like my friend Dick Gregory said, we're not free or brave anymore. We don't have any freedom and we're not brave. But it used to be that America was the land of the free and the home of the brave. Why? Because in the original constitutional language, the United States of America held all land in America in allodial title. Allodial, allodial title, which means that anyone in America would get a land patent and you own that piece of land. Once the President of the United States signs over the land patent to you, he is authorized to do that. He's authorized to sign land patents because he is considered a sovereign and so are you. So he is making a treaty with another sovereign. And so he signs a piece of land that you want, he signs it over to you, and that's it. And nobody, including the Almighty God, can touch that land. No one. No Federal Reserve, no government, no one can touch that piece of land for any reason ever, because it's a allodial title. Now, most people don't know that they don't have any allodial titles anymore. We are now living in a land that is considered to be fee, F-E-E, simple. Fee simple means you don't own nothing. You have to pay a lease price for the land you're living under. Therefore, you have a tax on your land. If you don't pay your land tax, then you have to be kicked out. And so that is a land patent fee because you don't own the land. But if you owned it, it would be allodial title. And nobody could ever charge you anything for living on that land, ever. And that's
Exactly. Exactly.
and that's the way it used to be with the cowboy days many years ago. When the sheriff would ride out to the guy's ranch, and he would stand out there with a shotgun and say, "That's enough, sheriff. You come far enough. Don't come on the land." And the sheriff would say, "I'm just here to ask you some questions." He said, "But don't come on the land." Why? Because he owned that land by a title, a allodial title. And so the President of the United States had to sign off on that allodial title because he was a sovereign and he is giving that piece of land to another sovereign through a treaty. And the treaty was called allodial. And so therefore, today, what's going on is the international bankers decided they can't live with this nonsense called a allodial title because you can't make any money off of it. Nobody can touch it. So they want everybody's land. And so they put the land up to commercialize the land. And when all the land was taken up, the governments, the banking institutions in Europe told the Americans, you better come up with some more land because your land does not belong to you. And we're holding it in payment for what you owe us. And so it was decided that because they looked it up and they found out that man equals land, land equals man, because without man on the land, you got nothing. You just got a piece of property. It's just sitting there and dying. And so you call man land. And so they said, well, all right, since we don't have any more land to give you, we can capitalize on the people who live on the land. And so that's what we're doing today. We are all under something called fee simple, Fee simple, Simple. Fee simple just means you don't own anything, period. You
Right.
are, you have an economic, what do they call it? You have an equitable interest in whatever it
Hmm.
is that you own, you think you own. So that if you want to get rid of it, somebody has to give you some money because you've got some money involved in it. So it's an equitable interest, but you don't own it because the government is using that land as a security for their loans that they're getting from the international bankers. And so that's why we are in the mess we're in today, because nobody has an allodial title in America.
Well, it
And
certainly resonates
second,
with the Great Reset, by the way. The Great Reset talks about precisely
yeah,
this idea. They want people to get used to the idea of owning nothing, renting everything. But you're saying we already are there, which
you
makes sense
already are
because
there.
being taxed to if you own a property, but then you're being forced to pay tax for the land, then
Yeah,
as you said, it's not you don't own it outright. It's not
no,
yours. It's still rented land.
that's right. It's rented land, so you have to pay your taxes.
Hmm.
And so I remember someone saying that they had been abducted, that the aliens asked them, why do you pay rent to live on a planet you were born on? What's that all about? Why do you have to pay rent because you were born here? And so that's the reason why, because your land is now whole, is now being held fee simple. Look up the word in the dictionary, fee simple. It just tells you whatever is fee simple you don't own. And you have to pay some kind of a price to own it, or to live on it.
But
And
but there's
so
Well, there's another thing that I think is really important in this notion. Why do you have to pay rent to exist? Why is it that we are basically born into a sense of debt? We are born in debt, right? In the modern conception. Nothing
Yeah.
is given for free, right? Food, land, education, you name it, right? You have to pay. Even as a child essentially has to be provided for. So this overall archonic structure, what is that? Who is that ultimately, and what is ultimately in place that has been there for, and since ancient times? It's been the church, it's been the state, it's been the, as you say, the financiers behind the state, you know, basically using the state as a corporation of control. But what is that structure that ultimately holds humans in a form of slavery?
It's very simple. It's the Vatican. The Vatican is the most powerful organization on the face of the earth. The head of the Vatican is called the Pope, and the Pope is referred to as the Holy Father. Why? Because he speaks for God. He's Italian Godfather, if you get what I mean. So that's where it comes from. He is a Godfather. And so what the Italian Pope was saying many centuries ago is that God owns the whole earth. He owns it, but he's given it to his son. And the reason why we call Jesus God's son is because it's a Germanic term. It's in German. The S-U-N in English is Anglo-English is S-U-N, but in German, it's a Germanic language out of the Roman Empire. In German, it's spelled S-O-N, not S-U-N, but it's still S-U-N because we still go to church on Sunday, S-U-N. But it's believed because of the Roman Catholic Church, it's spelled S-O-N. So they say Jesus is God's son. That's where all of that comes from. There was no Jesus. There was no God's son. It's just a misspelling. It's another way of spelling son in the Germanic language. And so the bottom line on all of this is that a land patent is a gift from a sovereign to another sovereign, from one king to another king. They can do that. A king can give away whatever he wishes to another king if he wishes to do that. And there's nothing you can do about it because he is king. And so therefore, since you are a king, also you are a sovereign by rights that were established a long time ago. And therefore, if the King of America gives you a piece of land, it's called a land patent. And when he gives it to you, he signs the paper. And we have examples of that where the president actually had to sign certain papers to give a piece of land to somebody. Abraham Lincoln did that, and his vice president signed over land. And that was a gift from the president to you. And you were a sovereign, and he was a sovereign, and he could then deal with you on that basis. But today, there are no sovereigns in America, very few. And therefore, everybody is working right now and living under fee simple because they don't own the land. And it's really an incredible story when you find out how the world really works. It does not work the way you think it does. Nothing works the way you think it does. And since America, when they made this change from a fee simple, from a sovereign patent land to a corporation, they made America into a company, a corporation, like Coca-Cola Company. It's a corporation, so that today you have the idea that America is a corporation and corporations cannot make law. And that's why there are no laws in America. There is no law that says anything in America because America has no laws because it's a corporation and
There's
it's not
civil,
able to make a law.
there's
But
civil code, right?
yeah,
They run
it
on
has a civil code.
civil codes,
Yeah.
right? That
And so that's
substitute for
why
law.
they're called policy makers. The politicians are policy makers. And suppose they make a policy that you don't like and you don't care about that policy. Well, they have to make you care about their policy. So they have police who are the powers behind the policy. And that's why we have a police department. And nobody seems to understand that it's based on our land holdings. And the mere fact that we no longer own any land in America at all. And we are told that all of our land is under cemetery law. Cemetery law says that all of our land in America is under cemetery law, which means that if you own any land or think you own any land or have any land at all, you are a zombie because you are doing business on land that's a cemetery, and the only people in a cemetery doing anything is a zombie, and that's why we have all these television shows and talking about the zombies. It's a communistic, socialistic, communistic system of operation that nobody seems to understand, and you cannot get away from it because this is the way the world works today. So
Well, it gets
it's
more and
really
more overt. It gets more obvious, right? I mean, talking about zombies, I mean, you see people walking around with masks on that don't protect you from a virus because masks are not designed, cloth masks are not designed, hazmat, there's actual viral, virus suits that they have that's complete,
yeah.
complete hazmat style, right? I mean, that's what's designed for viruses. Everything else is a joke, and yet they're all walking around with their masks on. You're sitting, well, this is the zombification in plain sight. It's like in a way, it's rolled out. So that's what goes back to my question before. You say it's about land management. What is their ultimate, what is their goal with all of this playing out now with the coronavirus and the Great Reset and all that?
Well, their goal is quite simply to own the earth, to take every single square inch of land away from all other humans. And then they own the earth. Then they can decide what kind of weather we want and how much water we'll use and carbon dioxide use. They will decide whatever they want to decide because they own the earth. Well, in point of fact, they do not own the earth. They, in fact, do not own anything. But that's why we're told in the mafia, if you want to change the way the mafia works, you better get your own army, pal. And so that's why today everything works the way it does because Americans are too weak any longer to have an army. And the army has given up and going along to get along. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff have said that they will do whatever they're told to do by the politicians because they don't represent the American people anymore. They represent the politicians who are policy makers, who have police behind them. It's really an incredible story when you finally see what caused the civil unrest during the 1860s, the Civil War, and we're seeing it coming again. Another civil war is being brewed right now, and we're watching it happen, and the same thing that happened back then is happening again. But we're not ready for it. We're not ready to back up our claim to sovereignty. We're not prepared for it. Nobody knows what you're talking about, and nobody would even suggest standing up to government and saying, this land is mine and you can't have it. I own it. Because in fact, you don't own it. It's on the fee simple. It's not on the allodial. But there is the biggest problem right there, is the ownership of land. The Secretary of the Interior many years ago, I can't remember his name, but he said the reason why our freedom in America is based on our land management. He was saying that because you have a right to your land, you have a right to your life. And so that's why we are a allodial title. And today, even in Michigan, if you're in Michigan, you can look at your constitution for the state of Michigan, and it says all land in the state of Michigan is held allodial by everyone. But today, they still are on the fee simple, because it doesn't matter what you say, they now have changed the law. And so now Americans have been left out in the cold, and they have to pay their taxes and pay their rents and pay their bills, because that's the way it is. We've been had. And so now they have run out of land, because there's only so much land in America, only so much. And every single square inch of land, because America is no longer a republic, it is a confederation of confederates, and it's not the United States of America any longer. We are a corporation called United States.
Correct.
Corporation. And because it's a corporation, corporations cannot make law. Period. They cannot make a law because they're a corporation. That would be like Coca-Cola coming out and saying all Americans must do this or that. And that's the law. Well, correct. They can't do that because it's just a private company.
Exactly.
And that's the United States corporation cannot make any laws. They have to have a policy. Well, yes. Any corporation can have its own policy. It's natural. And
let me ask you
have policy makers.
Yeah, let me ask you something. So you mentioned the Catholic Church. Now, we understand the Catholic Church is not the Catholic Church that people think it is. This is not some Christian organization that was designed, to basically help humanity. Think of it as you would understand. Think of it as the continuation of the Roman Empire, turning Roman emperor into the chief pontificate, the Pope, right? The pontiff, the Christed anointed one on earth, who has the keys to heaven and earth, right? But think of it even more as Babylonian, right? Let's connect this now to the Babylonian cult, because if people understand that there's an ancient cult that really masquerades as Christianity and God-serving, charity doing good people, and actually understand that there's a cult that is very dark and has nothing to do with the God of love that people think that they're praising. How can we explain this to people?
Well, to start with, the Pope has said that God owns the whole earth and that God gave it to Jesus. He gave the whole earth and everything on it to his son, Jesus. But which Jesus God? Is not here.
Right, but
He's busy elsewhere right now. He doesn't have time to mess with us. And so the Pope said he will take over the possession of the earth for Jesus until he comes back, and then he'll give it back to him, supposedly. And so that's why we are under the papal administration of the earth, period. And that's why kings and rulers and princes from all over the world go to the Vatican and get on their knees and kiss the ring of the Pope, the Holy Father who speaks for God. He is the Roman Godfather. And everybody knows it.
Let's be specific, Jordan. God is not what people think this God is. What God are they referring to? What God are they actually worshiping?
The God of the Catholic Church is the fish god Anis. And you've seen that. Have you seen the pictures of the fish god called Anis with the papal headdress?
You mean Enki? They call Enki in the Sumerian Enki, Enki, Anki Ia, EA,
Yeah,
Ia.
NK, yeah.
Yeah,
But
Anki.
it's actually the the fish god of the Babylonian fish god is who the Pope actually represents, the Babylonian fish god. And so that's why he wears that strange hat, because it's a hat worn by the priest of Anis, the fish god. And so we are being led down a fishy path, and something very fishy going on, and it's coming from the Vatican. And the Vatican made a deal with the King of England because when Rome was the Roman Empire and Caesar ruled all of the Roman Empire as his own. Well, he decided that he wasn't happy with just running the world. He wanted the British Empire under his control. So when he moved his whole armies into England, his center for operations in England for the Roman government was a city called York, England. York, England was a center of power in the UK for Roman Caesars. York, England. Well, we have a New York, and it's called the Empire State. Why? Because it's the one state in which the Roman Empire officially moved into and took over America. And therefore, it was a deal made with the King of England because they were in York, England, with the Caesar. They made a deal that you control America. America was given to the King of England in a deal, but he has to be paid, and therefore we are under the King of England right now in this country, under a fee simple arrangement. And it's really quite a long story, but most people have never heard the story, and most people don't even know anything about it.
So, trying to understand a little bit more in terms of the cult aspect, because as you know, Jordan, very well, there is there are occult forces within the ruling elite, right? And we see glimpses of it in things like Bohemian Grove rituals, where they're having this weird, Wagnerian worship of a Moloch kind of figure, where they sacrifice a child, to cremate care, as it's called. We're going to burn care, and they sacrifice a mock child. This is like ancient stuff that you would have seen maybe in like the times of worshiping the Moloch figure, or the bull cults. That Moses basically tells the Israelites, you're not supposed to do this anymore, right? So what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a force that is basically demonic, archonic, that is really behind the control apparatus of the planet, working to enslave them, and then working against a positive force that you could say is exemplified by the spirit of Jesus? Whether or not Jesus, as we understand it, was a real person, the spirit of his teachings and what he represents is certainly there as an embodiment of what we are looking to be as far as our goodness on this planet. Is that really that there's these two forces that are really at work, you could say, the dark and the light that are...
In Egypt, there is a temple, and on the side of this temple in Egypt is written a story. And the story is very, very interesting. It says that Pharaoh was walking along the Nile one day, and above his head was a silver disc. And he looked up and saw the silver disc, and the silver disc talked to the Pharaoh in his mind, telepathically, and it told him, go back to Cairo and take your seat as the king of Egypt and found a new city. And that new city is going to be called Akhenaten. And therefore, the symbol for that new city will be